Zach,
All
what's up, my
right.
man? How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, Joe?
Good, good. Yeah, so welcome to the show. I figured we'll just make it a conversation like we always have, which is kind of more
Yeah.
like a Seinfeld episode than anything, very open-ended. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I guess what's new in your world?
Oh man, I mean, I just quit my job. I quit my job a couple days ago. So like, that's been wild. That's been like a interesting journey of that, like of just like going through like the whole like process there. Like there was definitely like a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of just like
Mm,
I was like, what am I doing right now? Like, is this really the right decision? Like, am I going? Is this? Am I ready for this? Is this like did I set up everything that I need to like be able to have the most success on this? And one of the things I realized about it though is that like it's like there's never like it's one of those things that you just have to just start. Like
mm,
you can try to get as much of it done as you can to like be prepared and be ready, but like there's definitely a point when you have to just go and jump and go and do it, right? And then take a leap of
mm-hmm.
faith, right? Because I feel like no matter when I took this jump, it was gonna feel crazy and feel scary, right? And yeah, and so yeah, it's really exciting though. I'm like the next step, the this new life. I've been doing it for like the last 3 or 4 days now, and like having like it's great because it's like only having meetings that I want to be in
Mm-hmm.
is pretty awesome, right? Like just that one thing is like really really good because it feels very like freeing, right? Because those like just like sitting in long meetings where like you don't feel like you like it's just boring or like draining or whatever, like that kind of stuff. Like that's like one of the big things for me where I'm like I can't do this stuff. I can't work a job like this. It's too much. Like it's too draining.
Well, what was that like? I mean, because I know, we've talked. I mean, I've known this is coming for a while. You've known this is coming for a while, but it's like,
Yep.
but again, as you point out, the process was definitely one where it's you got to take the leap of faith, as you say. Like, when did you know that you had to make the jump? Like, when the time was, it just felt like you had to do it.
That's a good question. Like this has been something I've been hesitating on for a while. Like
Mm-hmm.
initially I had the very initial inkling like last summer
Yeah.
because like what happened last summer was there was this. I don't know if y'all remember the freaking there's a thing called like the Great Resignation, right? Where
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there was before the layoffs, right? But there was this thing back last summer like where like everyone was just quitting their job instead of getting laid off, right? And so at
Right.
Airbnb, my manager quit and so did all the managers at my level, essentially, right? So it was like all the ICs just reported to the VP, and it was like that for a little bit, and I was like I don't know about this, man. I
Oh,
don't know
wow.
about this structure. I don't know if this is going to work, right? And I
Jeez.
and I was like initially I was like, okay, this is not going to be this is not good. This is not good at all. And I but like I hesitated then because I felt like I didn't have the kind of the pieces in play. Oh, 1 second. Oh, there we go. I didn't have like the pieces in play to like be ready for that, right? And so like there was a couple things I knew I needed to do, right?
Yeah.
I needed to actually found the company. I needed to found the S corp, which I did. I did that back in like October. Like I
Yeah.
was very quiet about it for a long time until like a week or two ago. But I actually did all the paperwork back in October, and like I was like, okay, I need to do that. I need to like set up kind of like more of my product, right? Because I have this like tech creator product that I'm building, and I knew I needed to get a little bit further on that, so I didn't have to like do like 6 months of dev work before I like released it. And so I started working on that a little bit more and like getting things just a little bit closer, kind of inching things along. And then eventually I was like, okay, like I think it's time to go. And like I actually one of the things that I really liked about that experience, actually, those last like 6 7 months at Airbnb was like it was a lot. I mean, it really tested my leadership, right? Because there was
Mm.
no manager. There was no one. Like it was really crazy because there was like because the VP had like 30 40 reports or whatever, right? And it's like okay,
Wow.
like he's not gonna be able to do anything substantial in terms of leadership. That's gonna fall back on like the tech leads to
Yeah.
like actually do the leadership and pull things across the finish line. And that was one of the things that I was really happy about was that like we actually were able to not miss an OKR. Like we actually hit all of our OKRs for
Whoa.
2022, even though like we lost all of management and everything. And that was like because of me, right? And because of like the tech leads, like we were
Yeah.
able to like work together and like really still nail things. And And I mean, that was what was also kind of made leaving Airbnb intense, right? Is because like they gave me like exceeds on my performance review, and I
Mhm.
was like, oh, they're gonna give me a big old raise, a big old awesome raise here, and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm gonna walk away from that too. Like, okay, okay, like, but like I figured that like the other big thing that I realized though about all of this, right, and it was that like I needed to create like a story. Just like what was the story that I did, right? What was the thing I did at Airbnb that made impact, right? And like, and once I have that story kind of like wrapped up and bundled up, then I can sell that. And like, and I think that was the other reason why I stayed a little bit longer, because I felt like if I left like and I'd only been there for like a year and a half, I think that like as a
Right.
leader that kind of looks bad, right? And I was like, I need to be there a little bit longer, need to be there just a little bit longer. And like especially to have the story. And that's the other thing was like back in then in January, I kind of delivered all that impact. It was actually at that the creator house when I was living with Ken and Tina. Like
Yeah.
there was a week there where I delivered all that impact, and I was like so happy. I was like, yes, this is done. This story is complete. I am done with this. I am no longer tied here. And so
I
I was like, it was interesting to like be able to finish that and kind of
Mhm.
like see that through, because I kind of wanted that as a plan B as well. It's like, okay, if I end up hating, being an entrepreneur, or I suck at it or whatever, whatever that is, like whatever, I'm like, okay, at least I have a plan B of like just I can go back and work in big tech. I know that like in a year I can just take my resume and I can go apply again and I can get another
Yep.
job. It will not be that hard. And so that's like I think that was kind of what I've been thinking about. It's been a lot. It's been the last couple months have been so chaotic. I'm finally starting to calm down. Like it's finally starting to like relax a little bit, like yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, I remember back at the Creator House in January. I do recall you were very busy with work for a bit, so I was like, "Well,
Hmm.
I'll catch up with you and after you're done with
Yeah,
everything."
definitely.
So, yeah, that's so cool. I guess had you always wanted to be an entrepreneur or go into business for yourself? Or what was the?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like when I worked at Facebook, right, back in like 2016, 2018, those 2 years, I actually did it was very, those 2 years felt very similar to the last 2 years, where like what I did was I just worked full time and I also did full time on the startup, right? And it was like, that was my life. Like, because then what you give up is you give up fun and you give up peace and you give up like
Yep.
the things that you end up giving up by like committing so much to those things is like not worth it. That was the other big thing I realized was I'm like, I want to have more time to just have fun and relax and like invest in my health and well-being and stuff like that, because that is also super important. And like I mean, I had a startup back then that totally failed. That startup was great
Mhm.
though. I learned so much from that though. Like I can tell like my full stack engineering skills are so good because of that. And
Mhm.
it's like and that's like where I'm very grateful for that time that I just failed, and because I know that those failures are going to stack up and they're going to lead to a success, and that like
Oh,
and that's why I think this entrepreneur journey is really really exciting, because now I don't like, because the cool thing now is like it's not like I like, because before when I would write code, like when I was working these jobs, I always felt reluctant, a little bit reluctant, because I'm like, well, I can either go and do this or I can go and have fun with friends. It's like, oh, I can do this
right.
or I could go out dancing, or oh, I could do this, or there's like all these like I'm like, why do I have this trade-off that I have to make, right? I don't feel like I need to make this trade-off. And now I don't. Now I don't, because like I just have more time, right? And that time freedom is like the thing I'm really excited about and I really really value. And I really think that that is going to be the guiding light here, right? So yeah, it's exciting.
That's super cool. Yeah, and yeah, you're gonna trust me. It's there's a lot of tuition, some of which you paid, some of which you'll be paying down the road. These are lessons you just have to go through, and then like you can say, you can think about entrepreneurship all day. You can read about it all day. It's I always think it's kind of like dating or something, or getting married, where it's kind of like, yeah, you can read books on dating and getting married all day or having a kid, but it's not gonna really help you until you actually do it. And
Yeah, it's
you know,
very applied. It's a very, very
uh-huh.
applied thing, right?
It is.
It's not like history in that way, because history is like almost like the opposite, right? Where it's like it's hard to like apply history. You do like reading about it is like as far as it goes, right? For the most
Mhm.
part, right? And like kind of trying to synthesize it. But like, yeah, stuff like this is definitely, you just have to get your feet wet and freaking just go out there and like try and fail and learn and grow, right? And that like
Yeah.
you can really get really far if you can just do those things. And that like I noticed that a lot with a lot of things. I think that that's also the case with like coding and data and other
Yeah.
stuff as well, where it's like where there's a lot of times there's these people who are like, what book should I read to get good at data engineering?
Right.
And I always recommend your book,
Thank you. But it's not enough
but
though. It's not enough.
but like I actually don't like to say that because I
Yeah.
actually want to say like go build pipelines, go
Yeah.
like write code, go
I
write
agree.
SQL, right? Because it's like you can read all you want and that will get you kind of far, but it's not going to give you that intuition, right? That
Yeah.
the like the data intuition that you can develop after like a couple years of practice and applying stuff
Mhm.
is really powerful, and it's something that like I've wanted to kind of like teach people, but
Mm.
it's very tricky. It's very tricky because especially like as a tech lead, I've been like I was trying to do that at Airbnb where I'm like, you just need to like learn this data intuition piece of it, and you'll be able to like catch a lot more problems before they even
Yeah.
happen, or like be able to identify design flaws before they like actually manifest as like data sets and stuff like that. And I think that but that intuition really only comes after you've made mistakes, you've seen problems, and you've built pipelines. And that like you have to
Mhm.
some of those things you can learn and you can kind of avoid those mistakes, but some of them you can't. And I think after a while you
Yeah.
build up that intuition, and then the next time around you're going to do better, right? And the next time around you're going to get better for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I always kind of described it to back when I used to be employed with people on my team, but it's like the idea of it kind of seeing behind walls. Like you get to that point where you can just sort of anticipate like what's, several steps ahead,
Mm-hmm.
as a data engineer or as a software engineer, whatever practice you happen to be in. But that does, to your point, only come through experience. Like you can read books, and you should do that alongside, your practical hands-on stuff. But I would say reading is no substitute for doing stuff. It's just
Mm-hmm.
how it is. So totally agree on that. That's interesting. Are you gonna do you want to coach people? Like, what do you like?
Yep,
What
that's
are you working
great.
on?
So coaching, that's an interesting one. So like I'm gonna be doing a boot camp. I'm gonna try this out. Like, and that's why I'm doing a 6 week boot camp because like I'm not sure about it, right? I feel
Yeah.
kind of half and half about it. I feel like on one side, I think it could be amazing. It could be really good. On the other side, I think it could be something that could drain me, right? It could be something that could be like a lot, right? It could be something I think for me so far, like with this boot camp stuff, like at least in my mind, the things that I found very exciting are like building the curricula, building the projects, setting up like the lesson plans and stuff like that. That stuff has been really exciting. That's been really really fun. I think for me the side of it that has been it hasn't manifested yet though, but like I'm a little bit nervous about it is that like I think that like I'm because I'm going to have like as a part of the boot camp, there's going to be one-on-one time with me, right? And I'm
Mm,
gonna because like I want to learn from the learners, right? I want to learn like because I'm writing a book, right? I'm trying to
yeah.
and one of the things I want to like when I was like writing the outline for my book like back in December, January, one of the things that like really came across my mind was like yeah, but am I going to write a book's outline just based on like, oh, this is Zach's opinion of like what the best things to learn are? Like,
Mm,
it feels very, I don't know. It felt like when I wrote that initial outline and after I looked at it, I was like, this feels kind of arrogant a little bit. This feels like Zach, like you're going to write a book about like just like what you think is best and like because you obviously know what's best about everything, right? And it felt
yeah.
very like intense to me. And then I kind of
Mm,
like I actually took a step back from it. I took a step back and I was like, wait a minute, I need to nail at the highest level. I just need to nail the subject areas, like the like what people care the most about learning. And
yeah.
I think a big part, and that's why I want to do this boot camp, is that like I actually think that like at the very minimum, right? Even if I end up hating it, even if like I end up it drains me for some reason, right? Because it ends up being like a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. Like I will get information, right? I will understand like the pain, right? And I'll understand like where data engineers really are, where the knowledge gaps are, right? Because it's like if I get 30 students, right, I'm one of my other goals is try to get 30 students from various like kind of walks of life, like
Oh,
that
that's cool.
no one's going to be like beginner, right? Because like the requirement is that you have to have had at least 2 years of experience essentially. Like
That's
I
cool.
2 years of SQL experience is like the minimum that I'm looking for like for this boot camp because I already know like there's already like 7,000 people who have applied. So I'm like,
Nice.
I have a lot of like resumes and stuff to sift through to like kind of pick this like group of people. But like that would be the idea, is because like I don't want to like solve the like breaking into data engineering problem, because like I don't like
Right.
I'm not interested in that. I'm more interested in like writing a book that's it's targeted towards practitioners, right? Someone who is already in the field, they already know a lot about data, but that they want to grow. They want to get the more sophisticated techniques. They want to like learn how to like, where do you go from senior, right? It's like when you're senior data engineer, like where do you go from there? Like how do you grow further, right? I know that's definitely going to be in there. Like how do you become like a data architect, right? I think that like going from senior data engineer to data architect, I think that leap is actually like a lot, and like
Oh yeah.
and it's very competitive because most companies don't need very many data architects. I think at Airbnb they have like 6 or 7, like
Oh
it's like
wow.
in the whole company,
How
right?
big? How
And
out of
so
how many? Out of how many engineers?
like 1500, 2000, something like that.
Okay.
Like yeah,
Dang. It's not that
yeah.
many.
It's a
Okay.
very yeah. There's not very many data architects, right?
Is
And
architect at Airbnb, is architect looked at as like sort of the pinnacle of a title that you might want to get, or how's it
Yeah,
viewed?
for the most part. Like so, like data architect. Like there's actually two roles, or there's two roles that like two titles that are underneath that. They are you have staff data engineer and senior staff data engineer. You have like those two roles, and then also principal. There's principal
Hmm.
data engineer, but that's like literally like 3 people. And so like those, but like once you hit staff data engineer, then you are also a data architect, and then
Right.
that's how you and then you have the ability to like review Midas models and review code and like really give your stamp of approval means a lot, right? At that point, because they are like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing, right? He knows data, he knows pipelines and all that stuff. And yeah, that is like kind of the like, especially for people in data who like aren't as interested in like going into management, like and becoming like an
Right.
engineering manager or a data science manager or whatever. That is like that's the other career path. I mean, for me that was what I thought I was going to do, right? I thought
Mm.
my long, like especially like when I think back on like where what I thought I was going to do like in 2017, right? Say like go back like 6 7 years ago. I thought that like one of my goals was I want to be a principal data engineer by the time I'm 30, right? I want to do this in 7 years. I want to climb to the top of the ladder in 7 years. And it's funny because like now I'm like really close. I'm like really, really
Yeah.
close. And
Yeah.
I know that like I'm really just like one promo or one interview away from getting that. And like now I'm like, things are different now though. Things are different. Like, and that I don't need that. I actually don't need to do that. Like I can actually go
Interesting.
and build a different life for myself. And that's one of the things I'm very grateful for from like LinkedIn and content creation and all this stuff, is that like it's just showing me like a completely different path, like a completely
Hmm.
different path that is like is at least as abundant, and like maybe even more so, like both in terms of money but especially in terms of time. um and I think that that is like one of the things I've been feeling very grateful for, that especially recently, because as I've like made this jump, I've been like, wow, the just seeing the response from people and seeing how many people are interested in like getting coaching and mentoring from me and from the boot camp stuff. And yeah, it's been wild. It's been wild to see that response, because like
That's
it
cool.
feels like I'm finally harvesting all like the hard work I've been putting in on LinkedIn for the last 2 years. Because like LinkedIn doesn't really pay you, right? They don't pay you
No.
like for anything organic, right? Like yeah, so
No.
yeah.
No, and props to you too. I mean, you built like a tremendous brand on LinkedIn. I would also say like you built it at a time when it wasn't as easy to get followers. Like there's certainly a lot of people out there who have hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, but back then the algorithm was easier to I don't know if it existed back
Oh
then, but
yeah, I
still it was just
regret not doing it in 2020. Like if you started in 2020, dude, like you like the compound interest that you have if you started in 2020 versus 2021. Like everyone that I know that like started in 2020 and they've been consistent, like like Ali Miller or Ashwarya or like a couple
yeah.
other big names out there. They're at like half a mil or millions of followers.
Hmm.
Do you know Steve Nori?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a million followers, right? Because he's been doing it since like since the beginning of the pandemic, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. That's like where and it's been interesting to see how that's kind of like kind of changed over time, right? Because I've noticed that since, especially since the beginning of the year, it's been kind of like it's been really slow for me for the like I've had my slowest growth on LinkedIn over like the last couple months, right? Because I've
Mm.
just been like there's been I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is like I'm pivoting a little bit, right? I'm not as much about just like getting top of funnel. I'm more about like pushing people to like middle of funnel. trying to get
Yeah.
people to like look at Mage or Sylph AI or like my new boot camp and stuff like that, trying to like essentially convert people, trying to like shift my focus a little bit to other things while also still like, thinking about these like top of funnel stuff, because it's very important to keep growing there as well, because like that's going to be that it's still good. Like it's one of those things that's very interesting about LinkedIn, is that like it's worse than it was, and I think that's what makes
Mhm.
some people ungrateful. But they forget that it's actually still really good. Like it's still like the organic reach is still like, I'd say it's the second best. It's still like the second best of all platforms behind TikTok.
Mm.
TikTok's insane, dude. Like
Yeah.
so on TikTok, right? So last week, right, I did 1.5 million views, right, on TikTok last week, and
Damn.
I had 1,000 followers. 1,000,
That's
right?
nuts.
Right. And I'm like, what is going on here? TikTok, you are a crazy, like, because 1.5 million in a week is like, that's like what I like. That's like my kind of my goal on LinkedIn is to do
Mhm.
1.5 million like impressions a week. That's like just to like
Mm.
that, because that's like that's showing me that I'm being consistent enough. And it's like,
Yeah.
even if I like am not trying really hard, I can usually hit that goal, because it's just like do 6 or 7 posts a week and then you'll hit it. Like you're gonna get that. Like at least because I have enough followers now that like it's
Yeah.
pretty easy. Even if my content isn't that great, I'll still get that impressions, and that's like one of my goals, right? Is to like keep that going, keep that habit going, right? Because I know
Mhm.
that it's gonna be like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you stay consistent for 2 years, like you can get into a really good position. But if you stay consistent for 10 years, like you are like untouchable, right? It's like you like, because it's just like where you can just keep like you keep building on that compound interest, and like, and I've definitely noticed that on LinkedIn as well, right? Where things kind of ebb and flow, where there's like in like some and a lot of times it's not even about you as a creator, it's about the platform. Where like I noticed this as
Yeah.
well, where like I'm like, dang, I'm growing really slow. But then I go look at like other creators and I'm like, wait, they're also growing pretty slow. Like it's just like no one's getting followers right now. It's like, no, it's not like I'm losing. It's just that like LinkedIn is like not as like charged up, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
it's weird.
it's
Social's
interesting
weird.
too. Yeah, because I mean, I'm sure you're in the same boat, but I talk to a lot of other content creators and influencers that happen to be in these groups. I'm like the weirdo who's just like doesn't care. I'm just like I get followers almost by accident more than on purpose, but it's
Oh yeah, followers by accident are my favorite, dude. Like getting followers from like a shout out, or getting followers from like,
Mhm.
I love it, like, because now like I've like I feel like I've infiltrated like India LinkedIn, where now like
Mm.
everyone in India, like whenever they post something, they'll tag me for better reach. And then
Yeah.
like, because they know there's some percent chance that I'm gonna be like, great post, right? And then and I'll
And it
comment
goes
great post, and then it's like I bless the post, right? And then it blows up, right? And so like, yeah, and that's like, that's the benefit of like engaging with other people's content, right? Is then you show up on other people's content, and then
Mhm.
you get this like cycle, right? Where it's like, where, and I think that for me, that's actually, it's getting to a point now where I think it's like that is like probably half. It's probably half of my growth is from that kind of virtuous cycle of like
Mm.
other people mentioning me, other people tagging me, other people thanking me, stuff like that, because that's really where like then people are like, wow, like people, that guy must be pretty cool if this guy's like publicly thanking him, right? And so like, yeah, definitely that like process is very good. That's how you can definitely get to a very high level on LinkedIn for sure.
What are some ways to screw it up on LinkedIn?
Ooh, that's a good one. I love that. Okay. Okay, I think there's a couple things there. Like, one, I think, and dude, this is so great. Oh my, I'm so happy. Like, you're like, I've done like 20 podcasts, and I think this is the first time I've been asked this question, and I
Mm.
actually have a lot of thoughts.
Ooh, let's
So,
go.
okay, so I think a couple things there. Like, one is like, at least for me, I noticed like early in my journey, like, so September 2021, right? I had my one of my best months ever. I went from 20K to 50K in 1 month on LinkedIn.
Dang.
It was insane. It was like 1,000 followers a day, right? It was so crazy. And but one of the things back then that I recognized was that, and this is one of the things that I noticed, and I've stepped away from this content actually because I don't like it, I know that like it can be addictive to post stuff like this because it does get you more followers. But like I've noticed that like the the blowback and the other stuff that you get from it. So like back then I was actually posting like a lot more like spicy, controversial takes, right,
Mm.
on things, right? And like that kind of content like really does stir people up and gets people going, right? And but like the problem is like then you get all these haters in your inbox, and you show up on LinkedIn lunatics, and then people are like, you suck, Zach, you suck, you're a terrible guy, or like, and I'm like, dude, like I'm sorry, like I'm sorry that I had a controversial take. And so I did that. And I got like addicted to doing that for like 2 months, right? And I was showing up on LinkedIn lunatics like every 3 or 4 days.
What was the post? What was the post that got
Okay,
you
okay,
got
I'll
made you
give an
famous?
example. Okay,
Yeah.
there was one specific one that I had that like I regret. The one I guess it's really burnt into my mind. So like back then I was getting so many connection requests, right? It was insane. And so one of the posts I made was I just took a screenshot of the connection requests, and it was like I had like 18,000 pending connection requests, right? And I was like,
Whoa.
yo. And then in the post, I was saying, like, okay, first off, like, if you want me to, like, because there's like a limit, right? You can only have 30,000 connections on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. There's like a upper limit. And like, so in the post, I essentially was like, yo, like, if you're sending me a connection request, you got to send a message. You got to do something to stand
Oh.
out, right? You got to like, I'm not, because I'm most likely going to ignore it, right? But then at the bottom, this is what set people off, right? I was like, or work for a good company. If you work at Google or you work at Facebook, you're automatically in, right? Or like we have a lot of mutual
Ooh.
connections, and then you're automatically in, right? And people really hated that. They were like, "How dare you? How dare you, Zach?" Right? And like that made me show up on LinkedIn lunatics, and everyone was like, "This guy is arrogant. This guy is terrible." And I'm like, I'm sorry that like that I just gave people my algorithm. I wasn't I feel like I was being transparent. I wasn't being evil. But like that one really got to me. Like I now it made me like second guess some things about like
Mm.
what is going on here, like what I like what is my goal here, right? I think that's a big one, right? That I've noticed is like that. Like, oh, there's some other ones though too. I just want to give you another example, like because there's
Yeah.
like another thing that I've been very open about on LinkedIn, right, is like kind of like my autobiography, like my story and my
Yeah.
life, right, or whatever, right. And like one of the things that like I've made a very intentional decision about, which was is strange to me. It's very strange to me that I actually ended up I'm going this way with it. Is like so like I've talked a lot about like I grew up in the Mormon church, right? I'm bisexual. I freaking like then those things do not jive, right? Mormon church and bisexual do not jive at all.
Yeah.
They're like very rough things. And like one of the things that I noticed is like when I post content like that, which is mostly supposed to be like from a place of like resilience wins, right? The content would do well. The content would do really well, right? Because it's like it's good, authentic, like tasty content, right? But I realized something about it, and I've been intentional about like changing things here. Is that like I have not mentioned that I'm LGBT on LinkedIn in over 18 months, right? I
Mm.
haven't even talked about it, and like I'm probably not going to anymore because like it gives me unwanted attention, right? Because then I'll get all these like really just nasty DMs, and I'm like, nah, man. I'm like, I'm not looking. I guess I'm not gonna post about that anymore.
Right.
I'm just gonna have people pretend that I'm straight. Like I don't give a fuck. Like whatever. Like and it's like that's like I noticed that I had to change that just because it's interesting because like sometimes you'll get this input from your audience that you're like, okay, I guess I'm not gonna talk about that anymore because like that was uncomfortable, that was weird, that was awkward, right? And so like
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Well,
interesting how things go
it
there,
would
you
it
know?
becomes part of your identity too on the
Yeah,
social media, not necessarily your own personal one, but now it's like, oh, here's Bizak.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and then it becomes like, then it starts filtering into data engineering content. It just gets a bit odd. Like it would be the same
yeah.
thing if you put your political affiliation on your
Yeah, exactly,
I mean,
exactly. You're like, I'm a Democrat and I freaking do big
right.
data. Right.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's like,
yeah,
okay, like
exactly. And,
one of these doesn't seem to affect the other, but okay, thank you. So
hmm.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, and again, I think everyone should just do your own thing. Obviously, I personally don't really
Hmm.
care whatever people do. As long as it's hurt of the as long as you're not like hurting other people or stuff, but being your orientation has nothing to do with much of anything, in my opinion. And
Yep.
it's just, but yeah, I can totally get where some people just take that. We're just in such a weird time right now where it seems like people just pick up on like just the tiniest thing and just run like 50 miles with it. And like really at the end of the day, like what does it matter?
Oh
So
yeah. That's like I definitely noticed, and this is one that I've actually taken a different stance on, right? Because I think it's
uh-huh.
actually more important. and it's in my headline still on LinkedIn, is I have ADHD in my headline on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
right? It's still there, and like I have not removed that in like years, right? And like even though like I do, I mean, even for that, there's definitely times when people are like, "Why are you advertising your disorder?" Right? Why are you like like that? That seems gross, Zach, right? And I think for me, the difference, I think the difference here between like those two labels, right? So you have like the bisexual label and you have the ADHD label, is that ADHD actually impacts your job. Like
Oh,
it actually has an impact on your job and how you
I
work.
was diagnosed with it years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
I have it too.
exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Talk about
Yeah,
that.
and I want to make people feel less alone, right? Because I know that like for a lot of people with ADHD, they a lot of times they feel like they're the only one, or they're like, "Wow, why can't I work like a normal person? Like
Mhm.
why do I have to have all these problems and issues that like why is my brain broken or whatever?" And I think that like that is something that like I mean, I lose followers a lot actually. Like when I make posts about that, when I make posts that are like talking about ADHD, very often I lose followers from those posts actually, right? But
Interesting.
I'm like whatever, people like only the strong survive, right? Whatever, like I don't care.
Yeah.
Like if you don't like this content, if that's like the deal breaker for you, then yeah, you don't deserve my content.
It's
Like
like ride or die, bitch.
yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. Like and so like and because it's one of those things that like I noticed for me as well is that like it's something that like like permeates my life and like impacts like every aspect of my life like in so many ways. And so like yeah, and I feel like I've on the other side, I feel like I've made like progress on it too, right? And I feel like I've been able to manage it better and figure out like things that make it so it doesn't feel so challenging,
sure.
and that is the stuff I want to guide people on because that's one of the things that I also and this is a this is a true stat. Did you know if you have ADHD, you are 700% more likely to be an entrepreneur, right?
Well,
700%,
yay for
right?
us.
And so that, yeah, good for us, right? And it's like and so that's the other side of this is that like I feel like with ADHD as well is that like it's a disorder, but it's also like kind of like a gift. It's like a gift in its own way. It's like a weird, nasty gift, right? It's a gift. You get these benefits, but you also get all these like drawbacks, right? And like that's
Yeah.
the other thing I've been trying to help like paint a picture for, right? Is like how do you like kind of paint this in a light where it's like, yeah, people with ADHD are awesome and they can do really great things, and not just paint it as like, oh yeah, people with ADHD are messed up, man. Right? Like you want
Right.
to have the whole spectra of like things there, you know?
Oh, it's
Yeah.
totally true. But it's interesting too. Like, I mean, yeah, you and I both have it. I was diagnosed like well over 20 years ago with ADHD, and was prescribed meds and all that. And I didn't sit well with me. I just didn't like the fact that I was taking the equivalent of like pharmaceutical grade amphetamines for my condition.
Yeah.
So I managed to get off it, but along the way it required a lot of it was hard. It was really hard to remove myself from the medications, and I've just had find other ways to channel the hyperactivity towards something constructive. I figured out how it worked for me, but I'm
Mhm.
stoked when I see other people talking about that and just mental health in general because it's when I talk to other people about your content, they're always like what they like about it is that you are open about the mental health issues. I think this is a serious thing
Mhm.
that impacts a lot of people. This might have been the first time I came out talking about my ADHD problem, to be frank, but it's just one of these things where I feel like everyone, I think a lot of people do struggle with some aspect of mental health, especially in tech. Tech's a meat grinder.
Mhm.
It'll mess you up if there's a lot of ways it could. It seems glamorous on the outside. On the inside, there's a bit to it that you might not like. And you just got to deal with it. But people like your context. I think you're very open about it, and I think people feel like they aren't alone. And I think it's super
Mhm.
cool. So
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
been interesting. Like I've ebbed and flowed on like that on the kind of idea of like should I be taking amphetamines or not for my ADHD? Is that like
right?
is that the right path forward, right? And like I've ebbed and flowed. Like it's been interesting. Like right now is
Yeah.
actually a very interesting time because like I'm kind of forced to take a break because of the fact that there's like a massive shortage right now. Like it's like
Oh, that's
you
right.
actually
There is.
you can't even fill a prescription right now.
Ooh, what are
yeah,
people
like
getting
anywhere. Like
instead? What
yeah. So I'm not taking like yeah since like October November I've had to just go off of it,
Oh,
right?
wow.
So it's
What
been
are there any other, like, substitutes, out there available right now, or is, like, it
that's I mean like I've been trying that, right? Because there's essentially
yeah.
like well there's like you have like Adderall, which is like amphetamine, and then you have Vyvanse, which is like it's
Mhm.
like delayed onset amphetamine. and
What was it?
then you have like
Concerta was
Ritalin.
another one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ritalin, Concerta, like the
yeah,
methylphenidate, right?
yeah.
Methylphenidate's the other one that is methylphenidate for me doesn't work like at all. Like
Mhm.
it's like I would rather have coffee than methylphenidate. Like I honestly like I don't think it works. I know it works
Mm,
for other people, and in generally it works for kids a lot better, right? But like for me, it's like not effective. So like
right.
I've actually tried both. I was like, okay, maybe a doctor, can you switch me from Adderall to Vyvanse? Because Vyvanse is expensive. Vyvanse is like $400 a month, right? And
Oh my
maybe
god.
maybe just because it's expensive, though, it will actually be in stock, right? And that one's also out of stock, and I'm like, okay, I guess it's not meant to be then. I guess
Wow.
I just need to like, and I guess in some ways it's been good though too, because I've noticed for myself, like when I'm on them, like I definitely I get more like laser focused on things like for too long sometimes, where it's like I will be like sitting in front of my laptop for 10 hours, and it's like, wow, I need to get
Mhm.
up to like go to the bathroom or eat or do things like that. And that's like sometimes that stuff is like, it's, and I still can do that without meds sometimes, but I have to be like really inspired, right? And it doesn't
Yeah.
happen as often, which is, I mean, if it happens like, like once or twice a month, it's whatever. But if it happens every day, that's really bad for you. That's really bad for you if if it's something you're doing every day. And so like that's when I've been like, okay, maybe there's another way out of this that will like be better. And like, yeah, it's been an adjustment for sure over the
Oh,
last
yeah.
like
I can
the last
imagine.
2 3 months. I've been like, wow, dude, like especially with all the other change that's been going on in my life, I've been like, why is this change happening too? But I'm like,
It's all a conspiracy,
okay,
actually.
like
So
yeah,
the shortage happened because they knew you were gonna become an entrepreneur.
but
I always found like that, the way I got out of depending on meds for
mhm,
ADHD was really I think simplifying things to a large degree and just focusing on okay, so not necessarily focusing, just like okay, I need to get done like maybe one or two things today, and that's it. Right.
mhm,
The two big things I need to get done, that's it. Because otherwise, you might be focusing, and when you're on the meds, I mean, you're focused, like you say. I mean, for me, I felt like I was just a robot. I
yeah,
could do stuff for a long time. I was kind of a dick. But
mhm,
yeah, you get into the zone. But I tried to replicate that flow state really that you kind of get in without the
mhm,
meds, and I've definitely been able to achieve that. I would say very often now, but it takes work, and I would say it takes getting out of your own head too.
yeah,
It's hard.
yeah. And like and I think the other big thing is like if you can get it like into the, because one of the things I've noticed about it is that like it's interesting is that like I feel kind of, yeah, like the kind of robotic deep focus stuff,
Hmm.
but like I also noticed something about it that like I've noticed like in other times when I've been off the meds, when I've also still been able to attain that flow state, is that like I've noticed that like say I'm like coding, right? And then like I like if I'm on Adderall and I'm coding, right? I'm gonna like, and I'm working on a specific bit. I'm gonna and I'm getting really frustrated with it. I'm gonna still just keep trying to optimize this like shit solution. And then like if
Yep.
I'm not on meds, a lot of times what will happen is like I will be able to like sit back and look at it from a little bit higher level and be like,
Yep.
wait a minute, this is wrong. This is like, and I can connect dots at like kind of a higher brainwave because I'm not so like in the trenches of my brain. I'm not
Yep.
so in like the dopamine execution trenches of my brain, and I'm like a little bit higher in like I call it galaxy brain a little bit, of like being able to see the kind of spatial components of things. And like when I'm in that space, like, oh man, like the thing for me that is one of my goals this year is to and it's something that I've noticed about myself, right? Is that like generally speaking, I can create in two ways, right? I have two modes of creativity and productivity. One of them is from a space of anxiety, which sadly is actually the most common one. That's the one that
Mm.
is like probably 70% of the time I code from. My creativity comes from a place of anxiety, right, and a place of
Interesting.
like and it's one of the things that has been very like kind of scary for me, where I've been like, well, if I calm down, am I just gonna be like lazy? Am I gonna be like a bum, right? Am I just gonna not do anything if I don't have this anxiety all the time? And like,
Wow.
and then this the other side is like creating from an area of like expansiveness and an area of like kind of like joy and wonder, right? I
Mhm.
like that kind of that wondrous creativity is what I've been trying to like summon more. And like, I mean, I wish it was 100% that bucket, because if it was 100% that bucket, then like, I mean, then problem solved, ADHD solved, done. Like, I don't have to think about anything else, right? And then everything is just gonna fall into place. But it, like, for me at least, those moments have always felt so like fleeting. It's like it's kind of like
Mhm.
motivation in some ways, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, I might be motivated today, I might not be motivated today, but I need to be productive regardless. And my anxiety is more consistent. And that's the part that's like
Interesting.
really annoying. And I hate that about myself right now, is that I'm like, why? Why is it that I have to like come from this place of like, gotta get it done, get it done, gotta get it done, gotta get it done, right? And it's like, it's too much. It's too much. And like,
Mhm.
I noticed this especially when I worked at Netflix. Like when I worked at Netflix, like I had like it was almost 100%. Like I didn't have like the 70-30 split that I feel like I have now. It was like 100% zero, and I was like just creating from this space of anxiety. And like, I mean, I got so much done. I mean, it was insane. Like the productivity, like the actual like the objective amount of like productivity I got done there was amazing. But that was also like one of the things where I was like, dude, I can't keep working like this. I can't. I can't. I will die. I will die. This is not gonna work. Like I cannot do this long term. Like, and so like definitely that's a big part of this new journey for me. And like this kind of path of being an entrepreneur and like doing these things is like trying to figure that out, right? Because
Mhm.
it's tricky. It's very tricky stuff. Brains are weird. Like,
They're weird too, and the thing with entrepreneurship is you're gonna find it's got its ups and downs in the most extreme ways that you'll,
mhm,
now that you're solo, I think you'll discover these very quickly. I won't spoil the fun
mhm,
for you.
yeah,
But it's the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and the thing is there's always something to do, 'cause and what by that I mean, it's like their to-do list never shrinks.
mhm,
In fact, it grows because it grows the better you are at getting stuff knocked out, the more your list is gonna grow because you're that good at knocking stuff out. And so this is an interesting
yeah,
paradox. And so what I've always learned is just you gotta pick your battles. A lot of stuff probably never needs to get done, to be frank. It just
mhm,
never will be. Automation is your best friend for sure. And just like, your time as an entrepreneur, and especially running a business, needs to be spent, obviously partly working in the business, but more working on the business, as the old cliche goes, like working on making the business work for you and not the other way around. Because
mhm,
the danger with running a business is you built an opportunity for yourself. You may have just actually built your a huge trap for yourself too if you're not careful. This happens to a
yeah,
lot of entrepreneurs. Like before they know it, they're like, "Holy shit! Like what just happened to my life?" It's like
yeah,
it's I'm gonna go get a job somewhere, and it happens a lot. Like that's happened to me with my company too. It's like I think we reached a point where um, I just needed to clear my head a lot,
mhm,
and it is what it is. But I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just giving you the reality of it.
ooh,
But
yeah,
it
yeah, it
is
is.
it's fine, dude. I mean, I think you got a good thing going though, in a sense where you got that thing that's the hardest to get, which is a brand, right?
Mhm,
And a name. Like you can't buy that. No amount of money can afford you that. You have to earn it. So and
mhm.
you have. So that's
Yeah. So it makes it a little bit easier, right? And like I definitely like I relate to that like idea of like, oh, am I gonna dig my own grave here? And like that's what like I think that anxiety around like the boot camp stuff is definitely there, right? Because I'm like, ooh, like is this gonna be like better, or is this gonna be like is this gonna be actually more work? Is this gonna be less work, right? And I mean, that's where I mean, I've been very impressed with like when I've been working with Tina. She's like been amazing at like kind of showing the kind of the paths of like, nah, dude, like you can have an abundant life, you can make money, and
yeah.
you just have to like set things up in the right way so that like because I mean that's my goal. I mean, I'm not an entrepreneur who's like trying to be like, hey, I'm gonna go and found the next Square or the next,
Right.
Facebook or the next, billion-dollar company or whatever. Like, I really don't care that much about that. Like, I think that like if I can, get enough money for myself and like to sustain myself and be able to like have a good life, right? That's enough for me. Like and that will be like I mean it was interesting because like I had that thought when it was like when I was founding my company. I was like, it's like because you have choices. It's like, do you go LLC, do you go S corp, or do you go
Mm.
C corp, right? And like I was between S corp and C corp, and I was like, nah, C corp's the wrong play. I'm not. I'm going S corp. I'm going S corp because like I know that like I'm not gonna have millions of investors who are gonna be all like giving me money. Like I might have a couple investors, but like not that many. So
Right.
definitely that is a big tricky part of this, right? Of like how to go through this entrepreneur journey and like figure things out. Yeah, like so what things have you been working on recently, man? Like I mean, so you wrote a book, right? Like what's next for you
Yeah.
in this journey?
Writing another book right now, actually starting a
Ooh.
new imprint, which I sort of alluded to on LinkedIn for the first time
Mhm.
today too. So just I'm very likely self-publishing this, and
Nice.
along the way, I think other people are interested in writing books. So got a friend who's interested in writing on my imprint too. So I'm taking it one day at a time. I suspect that there's I've actually written quite a bit of what I think this business could be, but I want to start with the publishing part and probably grow from there. But there's a lot of aspects to it. I feel like, much the same way you're doing boot camps, I just feel like the way that people are educated and trained and progress in their careers, I feel like there's a lot of room for growth in this area, right? Like traditional publishing, I think, is broken, especially
Mhm.
for the authors and the creators. I don't think it. The publishing world, for example, it favors the publisher, not surprisingly. But
Mhm.
the author has to do a bunch of marketing. But if there are people like you or me who have audiences and have people that want to listen to them, like the question is, well, what do you need all that infrastructure for at this point? I don't think you need it, and so
Yep.
and I do appreciate my current publisher for my for fundamental data engineering. I think they're fantastic, and but at the same time, I just feel like if you have an audience, maybe you take a bet on yourself and then see where you can go. And
Yep.
training's another aspect too that I've been thinking a lot about. Like, how do you make um you know how do you help somebody level up in their career, maybe as a data engineer or whatever
Mhm.
field they're in. That's something I've been thinking very heavily about. And I guess the other side too, just thinking about, okay, so there's a lot of companies that want the attention of people like you and me,
Mhm.
and like, how does all this fit together, really, right? So
Mhm.
what I've been spending a lot of my time thinking about is just what's the confluence of all these different events, and just players in the market, whether it's people who want to learn or companies that want to throw a bunch of money at you for promotion.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah,
I sent this group DM like 2 or 3 days ago, and like everyone in the group like essentially laughed at me, but like I think it's gonna work out. Like so, hear me out. So there's like 4 or 5 companies that are involved here, right? So um you have my company, which is going to be kind of like but we're going to put my company to the side for a second. We're going to look at the other
yeah,
4. So you have this company called Taro does like a lot of like career coaching for software and data people to like grow their careers and to like kind of like learn about like how to interview better, how to
yeah,
get promoted, and how all those things kind of work. So that's Taro. So that's one piece of this puzzle. Another piece of the puzzle is Lonely Octopus, which is Tina's company. And Lonely Octopus is all about like self-learning and self-study. And I think
yeah.
especially for data scientists and data engineers, that will be a very important piece of this.
Oh, big
And
time.
then you have Mage, right? Mage is great
Yep.
for because their ETL tools are like very easy, especially for like I think that like one of the trends here, I think that's actually going to happen is that data engineering is going to keep getting squeezed, right?
Oh
It's going
yeah.
to get squeezed from both sides, right? It's going to get squeezed from like the software engineering side, where software engineers are going to take on more ETL, and from the data science side and data analyst side, where those people are just like, well, we can write the ETL, right? And I think
Hmm.
that like in a lot of cases, that's going to be a big thing that's going to happen. So that's why Mage is also in this group. And
Yep.
then the last one is Sylph AI, which is going to be the flexible work platform. So
Yep.
you have, and then so essentially you have my company that is going to like take people, up level them in data, right? Especially ETL. And like
Yeah.
I think I might actually target people who are more like analyst, scientist people. And then and then they can grow their career like through Taro, and then they can keep learning through Lonely Octopus, and then they can use Mage as like the kind of to build the ETLs that they
Yeah.
need, right? And you can kind of like have this like so then you can have like this like almost like factory for data scientists that know ETL, right? And I added everyone to the group chat, and everyone laughed at me, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like I'm telling you, there's a vision here. There's a vision here.
Well, I like what you're thinking. Though. You're thinking in terms of feedback loops, right? So,
Yeah. Mhm.
it's your systems guy. So I don't know. I don't see it as outlandish at all, actually. So
Thank you, thank you. See, well, no, and what I'm saying is that like other people, I've
yeah.
kind of road showed it on LinkedIn a little bit the last couple days, and
Mm,
people like there's more there than and I feel vindicated. I just feel like I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought. It's not that outlandish, people. Like, we can combine all of the forces here, and it's like where all the 5 Power Rangers come together, and you get like the
Yeah.
super mega thing, right? Like, yeah, for sure.
But that's how you got to think, right? I mean, I think you're entering entrepreneurship. I think thinking about things the right way, where it's like, how do we grow the pie? How do we create harmonies amongst all of our friends? I mean, that's
Hmm.
Power Rangers or Avengers or whatever it is, right? It's sort of
Yeah,
everyone, I mean, because I mean, we all have a very unique group of friends, I would say, where it's kind of it is the Avengers model, really. Like and there's a
yeah,
lot of different talent out there, and people just kind of doing their own thing in their own lane, but brought together, you can accomplish a lot, and that's what's really cool about it, right? So I mean,
yeah.
everyone's got their strengths, and everyone's got their weaknesses too, and that's where the other people's strengths come in.
Yeah,
So
and I definitely, and one of the things that I found that I've been very bullish about, like these 5 companies especially, is that like everyone in the company has an audience. They already
mhm,
have their own audience and brand, and like these audiences actually don't overlap that much. They
right.
overlap some, but they don't overlap that much. And so like that is that's another thing where I'm like, wait a minute. So it's like, even if this is very outlandish, just the fact that we have so much reach, even if
Hmm.
the conversion is terrible, we still have thousands of customers. Even if we
Oh
only
yeah,
convert half a
easy.
percent, we still have thousands of customers, just because there's just so much, such an audience here, right? So many people who are listening in. And that's just going to keep growing too, because I know that everyone that I've been talking to is just like, they're very dedicated to like that idea of like, yeah, we're going to keep building and keep growing and keep
Yeah.
getting this kind of growth going, because it's like, even it's like, if you have because it's like, if you think about it, it's like, if you have 1 million followers, like what's 1 million divided by 8 billion? That's like very, very small, right? It's like
Right.
0.001% or something like that. It's like still very tiny, right? You still have like, there's still so much more like influence and impact to be had, even if you have 1 million followers, right? And so like, that's where like there's definitely but it's not out of 8 billion though, right? Because you have to think about like data technical software engineering workers. So then it's probably like 1 million out of like 30 million, or 1 million out of like 50 million, right? So it's probably
Even
closer to like
still.
2%, right? Than like 0.001% or whatever. So
Yeah,
yeah.
but then you include education in the mix. So education is one of these broad things where,
Mhm.
that number, the other thing I've been thinking about is just kids. How do we educate them? Like adults, I think there's a lot of opportunities for them. I have kids.
Mhm.
I think every day about how I'm gonna help them upskill in a very fast
Yeah.
changing world. So I think it depends, the denominator could be whatever it is,
Oh
but
yeah.
it is like, but the thing I like about education too is it's not a zero sum game. Like, I came from consulting, which is like, that's very much a zero sum game. Like you get a deal or I don't get a deal, but like both of us aren't
Yeah.
getting the same deal. Whereas education and content is very multiplicative, at a
Mhm.
minimum additive. But I was at a stand-up show the other day on Sunday night. Some of the top comics in the world were all in Salt Lake for some reason, and
Mhm.
did a show. And what I thought was really cool is all these people have millions of followers, individually, or but
Yeah.
they're all comedians, but they all hang out and do a show together. Like that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
like you take
Definitely.
away from anything,
Definitely.
it made the show better. So yeah, it's interesting, man. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's a really exciting time, and and one of the things that I'm very excited by, which is like something that I noticed. I initially noticed it on Justin Welsh's content, and it's something that I
Mm,
feel very strongly about, which is it's an interesting concept, right? Where it's like, okay, how do you like? So say I have a course, and say the course is like $200 or $300, right? And it's like, in America, that's still a substantial amount of money, but like, in like other countries, in India, that it would be the same as like if we charge like $5,000 or something. So that would be the
yeah.
equivalent to like the equivalent cost to them. And so like, because one of the things that I've noticed about content and courses and everything is like, the margin is so high, right? The margin is so high that like, okay, like even if we do offer it at a 60% discount, we're still making money. It's not like we're losing money. Like
Right.
it's still like, it's just that like we're not making as much money per sale. And like, so a lot of these platforms, they actually offer courses at like purchasing power parity. So they like look at your IP address and they're like, okay, yeah,
Mm.
you're in India, so we're gonna give it to you at this price, right? Obviously, it kind of opens you up to like, if people want to use like VPNs
I was
and
gonna
like
say.
to be sketchy shit, right? But like I don't know. My opinion on it is that like I think most people aren't gonna do that, right? And that
Mhm.
like most people are gonna just like they'll just buy your, because it's like if they're gonna do that, they're probably just gonna pirate, right? Like they might as well just pirate your stuff, right? It's because you just get it for free,
Oh, my book's
right? But
pirated. My
like,
book is pirated all the time. I don't
oh yeah,
mind, right?
yeah,
Because I
yeah.
figure it's like, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it, and you're gonna steal it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure, exactly. And that's where I'm like, that's why I like the idea of offering it at purchasing power parity, because I think that it actually reduces piracy, right? Because then it's like, oh, these people in these other countries, they can actually get it at a price that they can afford, as opposed to just getting it for zero, right?
yeah,
And I think that is like it's tricky. I think it's trickier for like hard copy books, because there's the margin isn't as insane for hard copy books, but for definitely for like ebooks and for courses and stuff like that, like the margin's like 98, 99%, right? So
oh
like
yeah,
might
no,
as well.
that's what Nick Singh was telling me, right? Nick Singh did the Ace of
Mhm.
Data Science interview, and like he said like he only did physical copies for a while because the he didn't want to do a Kindle book so it would get ripped off. But then what was weird about that is he started seeing fake copies of his book on Amazon, so which is kind of
Wow, like people still
yeah,
copied it anyways. They copied the
uh-huh,
fake, or they like copied the hard copy. They actually like
yeah.
went to a printer and scanned all the pages, and like, oh man, dude.
Well, did you know this that the day that Fundamentals of Data Engineering came out, or around that time period, that
Mhm.
the summary books that you can find on Amazon, like the summary of I don't know whatever book.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so there was a summary book of our book that was released around the same time that our book came out, and I was like,
Yeah.
"What the hell is this?" And I
Yeah.
looked at it, and it was the weirdest thing. So the publisher had also published other titles, but they were summaries of like Alex Jones's The Great Reset and all these like crazy right wing books, and
Yeah,
then our
yeah.
book.
Yeah.
And then I downloaded the Kindle copy just or the sample just to look at it. And it was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. It was like it talks about SQL as a language you can use to query databases. Like this is definitely not our book. This is lame. This is really lame. And I
Yeah.
thought a robot made it actually. I figured it was probably a bot or some AI
Yeah.
agent that wrote it, but that was crazy, dude.
Yeah.
And the point being, it's like, yeah, if you have good content or a book that I guess is, any content that's going to do well, it will get pirated. And so the way I think about it is in terms of funnels, really. Like, if in India, for example, or whatever country, Africa, people
Mhm.
are pirating my book that, they can't afford it, but that might lead to other opportunities. Maybe it's a speaking engagement. Maybe they buy a course at some point. Maybe they buy your course. I don't know. It's
Yep,
like,
exactly,
it's just
exactly.
how
Because
it
it
is.
it still connects you, because it's like you're still like your brand is still there. It's just like it's like a LinkedIn post at that point, right? Where it's like you're
Yeah.
educating, you're just not getting compensated. Like, but you're building social capital, right? Even
Well,
if it
well,
even if people steal your book, like you're
well,
still, especially like if they steal your book and they get value out of a stolen book, they're like, wow, this guy's amazing.
that's cool.
And so like that's where I definitely think, yeah, that the whole idea of like building social capital, something that's very very important to me for sure. That's been like one of my guiding lights of like the content I've been making for a long time, is like
Oh, yeah.
it's more important to have a group of people that really really adore you than it is to make a lot of money, because like if you have that fan base and that group of people, then
The money
like
follows.
the money's going to be there no matter what, right? And
Well,
the money will be more durable even,
oh, for
right? Yeah.
sure. Well, and
Mhm.
like people like you, me, and Ben are like, we're building the data engineering category with our content and all of
Yep.
our own different ways. But that,
Yep.
and it,
Exactly.
and the cool thing is like we all help each other inadvertently too. Because it's like,
Yep.
the general category grows. And,
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
if it was just Zach or Joe and we hated each other and we
Yeah.
had our own things like, oh, he's such a piece of shit. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Or if we had a beef with the Seattle data guy or whatever, or whoever is
Yeah.
doing data engineering
I
content.
mean, that
Actually,
would be good content. I mean, if there was like a
maybe
beef going on and we like threw shade at each other, like, I mean, that would be like, I mean, it would be spicy content, but like, yeah, at
it'd
the
be
same time, it
funny
would
as
not be
hell.
good.
It would,
Like,
it
it would
would
be good short term, right? Or as like a parody. As a parody, I think it would be amazing. Like,
let's fabricate something like kind of like WWE or something. But but
oh, that's
the
so
thing
good.
is, it's like it grows the category though, right? Data
Yeah.
engineering is now like a popular thing. But I think back when we were all doing our own thing, talking
Hmm.
about it, we didn't know each other, right? Or
Yeah.
if we see each other in person, it's like, who's this guy? I have no idea who this is.
Hmm.
I'll just keep doing my
Yeah.
thing.
Exactly.
But now we're all friends, and I think that's again,
Hmm.
it's super cool, right? So I mean,
Oh yeah.
and it pales in comparison to the number of data scientists, data science content creators out there, which is just,
Oh,
everyone's a
it's
data science
insane. There's
creator.
too many of them. There's so many of them. Like it's insane. Like I'm always like, wow. Like and like because I know on LinkedIn, it's so funny because if you look at like hashtag data science has 900,000 followers, right? And if you look at hashtag data engineering, it has 40,000. Right? It's like 900,000 versus 40,000. So
Bit of room to grow. So
yeah.
Well, cool, man. I gotta get my
Yeah.
kids actually, but yeah, it's great chat.
Great chat,
Yeah,
dude, for
yeah,
sure.
and I'm stoked for your journey and your success, man. I'm like, you're one of my
Yeah.
favorite people, so we're homies,
Yeah.
man. Yes, love you, man.
I
So
love you too, bro. Hope you have
yeah,
this is great. We should do this again
yeah,
sometime.
let's do it again for sure.
Awesome.
All right, see you, buddy.
Cool.
All right, take care.